Hi everybody, Hell's Unicorn here once again, and this is going to be partially a response video to the recent video that Smarter Than You Are Able just put up, and I just wanted to address and expand upon some of the points he made. Him and I have been pretty much on the same page on most of the issues. I think we have a slight difference in opinion regarding trade issues, but it's a relatively minor one. But suffice to say, it was recently came to pass that the so-called tax cut bill put forth by President Obama has passed through the Senate. Now, before I get into the particulars about this bill, the problems that I have with it, many of you know that I am a very strong proponent of lower taxes for everybody, and naturally it would follow suit that I would support something like this. I would just like to state, first off, if you look at the United States Constitution, I think this is actually found in Article 1, Section 6, it states that all bills pertaining to procurement of revenue collecting, ergo taxes, are to begin in the House. And what do we have here? We have a bill originating from the Senate, and now it's going over to the House. This underscores the fact that our current government couldn't give a flying you-know-what about that damn piece of paper that we have that supposedly limits its power over us, this being, of course, the United States Constitution. As I said before, Republicans burn the Constitution, Democrats wipe their asses with it, and in this particular case, the Senate Democrats have not only wiped their asses with it, but they've also doused it in turpentine and are now setting it on fire as well. This is just adding insult to injury. But nonetheless, let's get into my particular problems with this tax cut bill. First problem is it's not a tax cut. It's an extension of an existing tax cut. Now, this particular cut in the marginal income tax rates in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It does lower the rates for a lot of lower and middle income people, and the top rate tends to affect the most adversely the upper middle class. And in order to fully understand my views on the current tax code, we have to discuss what is actually implicit by wealthy or rich, so to speak. There is a very large dividing line between just barely making the top bracket, making $200,000 a year, and being somebody like Warren Buffett, who brings in, I would venture to guess, probably more than 200 times that much every year just in bonuses, which are largely tend to be exempt from your standard taxation code. This is what we refer to as the corporate loophole. Indeed, the entire premise of our tax code is really counterintuitive to the notion of tax cut for the rich or tax cuts for the poor, tax cuts for anybody. The graduated income tax was designed for a very specific purpose, as outlined by Karl Marx, and that was to manipulate the economy in such a way that we would have a certain class of people developing. This would be an underclass that is largely reflective of the class of people that you have described in the book of Acts. This was the manner of living that the apostles lived by. This is essentially a utopian ideal, and sadly this is an ideal that many people have had imputed into their woefully empty skulls full of mush, and now have adopted as holy writ. If you doubt this, go into the nearest Starbucks and yuck it up with a couple of your local resident beatniks, and they'll tell you, dude, man, you know, like, all you need is love, man. You don't need no money. You just need love and some reefers. Now, I support marijuana decriminalization, but that's a load of crap. Property is essentially, as far as I see it, a God-given right. There was a quote by John Adams, who stated that if property rights are not held to the same standards as the laws of God, you will eventually have anarchy and chaos. And that's essentially what we have now. Now, to placate Smarter Than You Are Able, because I know he's a guy who believes that, you know, you take care of the little guy, and I don't disagree with him on this. The entire tax code is essentially set up to benefit the uber wealthy, the plutocratic, so to speak, and the thrifty, the people that know how to get around all of the various issues with the tax code that are adverse to those who run a business. The graduated income tax is designed specifically for the purpose of destroying upward mobility. It is designed to create a permanent underclass and to solidify the power of a minority overclass. Whether the top tax rate is 35% or 95%, you can rest assured that the top 0.001%, the true wealthy, the one that the media never talks about, will always find ways around it. The IRS code is essentially unto itself a novel comparable to Atlas Shrugged. All right, no human being can comprehend the actual tax code itself. On top of that, it's tens of thousands of pages. It's essentially set up so that nobody can actually legally conform to it. It's essentially a set of laws that makes criminals out of everybody in this country. And when you have a system where everybody's a criminal, well, de facto, nobody's a criminal. It's a free-for-all. It's anything goes. It's exactly as John Adams stated. It is a state where anarchy and chaos ensues, and in economic terms, this is exactly what we have now. Keynesian economics is a perfect system to conform to our current economic culture because just like the insanity that our code exhibits, it basically brings about an equally insane fiscal policy out of our government. And that comes into the second issue that I wanted to discuss here, and that is the looming omnibus spending bill that's going to be coming up. And I actually put a link to the Heritage Foundation on this. Now, the Heritage Foundation, I'm kind of maybe 60% in agreement with them on certain things, but when it comes to this particular omnibus bill, they're on the same page as me. And I just want to really kind of get into the particulars of this here. This omnibus bill that's coming is loaded to the brim with earmarks. I mean, it's ludicrous. And the vast majority of them are essentially, party favors to the outgoing lame duck Congress. It's ridiculous, to put it mildly. And frankly, I just don't know how anybody can stomach this. The primary reason why people, I think, are stomaching this is because this was introduced after the contentious tax bill that I just discussed earlier. Long story short, this whole notion of getting rid of earmarks, it's something that's not happening with this current Congress, and we'll see if this happens with the next Congress. I'm going to be watching with bated breath to see if Boehner and McConnell actually follow through on their assertions that they're not going to pursue earmarks in the future. But the truth is that earmarks are essentially nothing more than a specific allocation of money that's already going to be spent. The problem is not merely the earmarks. The principal problem with earmarks is that basically congressmen get their votes bought with them. So there's a inherent corruption problem with them. Oh, and I actually need to make a quick correction here. It wasn't the Heritage Foundation. It was the National Journal that put this up. And it's really kind of a actually, I'm getting all my websites confused. I'm putting a link for the site where I got this information from in the description, and I will just essentially get through all of the particulars with you right now. Essentially, this omnibus bill is being snuck through, and frankly, I don't like it. It's sneakiness. If you're going to essentially propose something like this, do it out in the open. Don't do it right at the end of a lame duck Congress after an election has already been decided. So naturally, I'm ragging on Harry Reid and company, and also on Pelosi. But this kind of stuff, there's a lot of this to go around, regardless to which party is in power. It's just right now the jackasses are in power rather than the big dumb elephants. So I provided a link in the description for the omnibus bill that has been proposed. We also have the DREAM Act. Basically, we're going to be giving more of our jobs to illegal immigrants. It's a lovely thing to do. And in addition to that, we'll naturally be further taking our fledgling welfare programs further into the red. We are de facto broke as a nation, so this is all, basically, this is mostly a moot point, everything that I'm saying. We're on the verge of a real dire economic catastrophe. I mean, what we've experienced so far is just the prelude for what will be a very, very wicked symphony. And I, for one, am not looking forward to the crescendo, and I don't think anybody else should either. From my standpoint, there is one thing that really needs to happen right now, and in order to avert a coming calamity. We need to have rapid drawdowns of all of our troop placements in the Middle East, at the very least. And if not the Middle East, everywhere else. We need to start saving some money on military spending, let's just put it that way, particularly with non-defense spending. Overseas allocations, that needs to be drawn down. And on top of that, we need to get a handle on domestic spending as well. We are actually outspending our current foreign policy in domestic entitlements now, thanks to the insanity of Barack Obama. And we also need to shut down this current Congress, this lame duck Congress. It is out of control. I don't know where Reid and Pelosi get off thinking that they can sneak this stuff under everybody's noses. They're not sneaking it under mine, and now they will not be sneaking it under any of yours. So to wrap this up, I'll just say to Smarter Than You Are Able, basically in full agreement with you with regards to the wars, and if we're going to continue with this nonsense, essentially killing people in mass overseas, we should at least be paying for it. And in order to pay for it, we need to raise revenues. So there's a question of whether or not you get more government revenue towards higher or lower taxes, but from my standpoint, the graduated income tax is a violation of our basic civil rights as Americans. Our rights in both our persons, we're having our privacy violated by having our income records perused by the IRS, and also we're having our property rights violated. And I know there's a lot of leftists out there that think that property rights are selfish. Well, you know something? Sit and spin. I don't give a shit. All right? I don't care what you think property rights are. I'll tell you what they are to me. They are essentially the means by which liberty is realized. So you don't have economic liberty, you don't have liberty, period. With prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.